Okay, today the lesson that we're covering is 7th grade 3.2 lesson. This is actually a 2-day lesson. We'll be working today where students will define slope and determine the slope of a line from a graph. The standard covered in this lesson is 7RP2B. The page numbers out of the hardcover book are page 104 through 109, and out of the practice journal, pages 59 through 62. Today we're going to be working with what is slope. Slope is actually a rate of change between any 2 points on a line. It's also a rate of change, for example, when we did our activity with this lesson and we were finding the speed of animals in feet per second or miles per hour, and we went through and graphed that. We were actually graphing their speed, which is their rate. Today what we're going to do is we're going to work with where they give us a graph and they ask us with that line to define the slope or the rate of that line. So the thing that you need to understand about slope is it is a change in y over a change in x. So if you notice, your y's are actually your numbers that are going up and down. Like here's our y, so those are our numbers going up and down. This would be our change in our y's. So we changed 3 boxes there to get from point A to point B or vice versa. Okay, so we went up 3 boxes, that's our rise. Our run, on the other hand, is our distance across. So to get to the second point, we had to go over 2 and then up 3. But when we do slope, we always do the rise first and then the run. So our run was actually 2 boxes. The slope of this line is 3 over 2, and we would leave it as 3 over 2. As you get older, it may be something that gets converted and you're expected to change from a mixed number to an improper fraction. But for now, we're going to leave them as improper fractions. Okay, so there's something else that we have to understand about slope of a line. There are positive slopes and there are negative slopes. And in order to determine if it's a negative or a positive slope, we have to just look at the line. We're not worrying about counting anything. We're not worried about if we went up or down to the different dots. It is how the line looks. So when you look at a line, just like when you read this sentence right here, you always read it from left to right. You do the same thing with a line. Here, working left to right, notice that it goes up. If you were to think of this as a bank account on day 1 and day 10, well, your bank account went up from day 1 to day 10. That would be a good thing. It had things put in there. It's now at a positive balance. That's a good thing when your money goes up. On the other hand, if we look at the second one, our red line here, if we work left to right, on day 1, we started with a lot of money and it went down as we worked our way through day 10. So in other words, that would be a negative thing. Money was taken out. It was a negative. It's negative when you have less money in your account. So this would be considered a negative slope. So we're going to go ahead and look at a couple samples here, and we're just going to identify whether they're positive or negative slopes, and we're not going to count the slope right now. So when I look at this first graph, it's working from left to right, it's going up, so that would be a positive slope. If we would look at this other one, from left to right, it's going down, that would be a negative slope. Okay, so now what I want you to do is identify whether this is a positive or a negative on each of these two. For this one, you should have had a positive slope. And for this one, you should have had a negative slope. Okay, so now we're going to put those 2 pieces together. We're going to count our slope, and we're also going to determine if it's a positive or a negative slope. I usually do the positive or negative first because that's often the part that is forgotten. So when I look at this red line, I notice that it's going down from left to right. So I know in the end that my answer is a negative answer. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create, for visual sake, a triangle between those dots. So if I go down from this dot to the line where my other dot is and across, I end up with creating actually a triangle there. Now I'm going to touch each box to count the boxes. So my rise is 1, 2, 3 boxes. My run is 1. So my slope is negative 3 over 1. That can also be written out as negative 3. Okay, so we're counting boxes, not lines. And that's sometimes where kids make their mistake is they want to count from this line here up to this line, and then they count that and they say there's 4 lines. But you have to remember it's how many spaces it moved. So when you move from one line to the next, that's 1 space. In other words, that's a 1 box, that's a 1 box, that's a 1 box. So we end up with 3, okay? All right, so let's try another one. Okay, so here's our next one. So our rise and our run. So I'm going to create that little triangle again. So looking at this, it's a positive slope because it's going up from left to right. Our rise was 2 boxes. Our run was 2 boxes, which is the same as a positive 1. So when we have something that can reduce to a whole number, that is usually how a slope will be left, is in its whole number format. If it's improper, we're going to go ahead and leave it improper. The one thing that this does tell me is that actually there was another point on this line that fell on a corner of that grid, and that was right there. Had I checked the slope between these, the blue triangle now, it would be a 1 over 1, still positive, which is the same as 1. Okay, if I picked 2 other points, maybe I picked this point where it crosses through a corner, and this, well, we'll do this point. If I check the slope between those 2 blue ones, that's 3 over 3. It's still 1 when you reduce it down. So the one thing that you need to understand is no matter what 2 points you pick on a line, the slope is the same. So that brings me to the next thing that I need to jump back a slide for. And that is, what happens if they don't give me the points on a line? So I'm going to go back to this, and I'm going to actually enlarge these grids so that they're easier for you to see the corners of the grids. Okay, so if I were to focus on this very first one that I have here, I'll cover these up. If I were to focus on this one right here, in order for me to find the slope of this line, I have to identify 2 points where it crosses through the corner of that coordinate plane. So as I look at this, I'm seeing right here where it crosses through the corner of one of the squares. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move down that line, or if I had started down below, I'd move up the line. So I'm going to move along the line, not on a corner, not on a corner, close, but I don't think it's quite on the corner. Not on a corner, not on a corner, not on a corner, not on a corner, there's a corner. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm now from those 2 points going to count out my rise and my run. So sometimes you're going to get lines where they're not giving you the points, and you're going to have to find those. So my rise, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 blocks. So 8 over 1, 2, 3. So we get 8 over 3, and that's a positive line. So it's positive 8 over 3. Okay, so let's try that with this one. So when I look at this next one, we have to identify 2 points. So let's see, looks like not on a corner. There's my first corner. So now if I move down my line, not on a corner, not on a corner, there's a corner. So I'm going to go ahead and count the slope out on that. Okay, so when I do that, let's see, there's our rise, there's our run. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. And then I would have to remember that that's a slope going down, so that's a negative 3 over 2. Okay, I want you to realize once again, just if you were looking at this and you had noticed that that point right there that I left was on a corner, but you didn't maybe see the one that I originally had, but you found this one. Okay, if I go through and I count the slope off of this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 over 1, 2, 3, 4. Whoops, and then I write a 3 over 4. Notice that 6 over 4 would still reduce down to 3 over 2. So it would still be that negative 3 over 2. So no matter what 2 points you pick, as long as you're picking on the corner of the grids, your slope is going to be the same. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and give you guys one that you can try on your own. Okay, so I want you to go ahead and work through this one. Find the rise and the run. So I'll do the triangle on this one. So go ahead and write out your slope for this one. And don't forget to identify if it's positive or negative. You should have gotten negative 3 over 2. Okay, this time I'm not going to draw the triangle. You're going to have to go through and either decide to count it out without the triangle or transfer it onto your grid paper and count with the triangle on it and draw the triangle. So go ahead and do this slope. You should have gotten -1/2. One more. On this one, you would get a +1/1, which is the same as 1. Okay, that's it for finding slope from a graph. Good luck with this one, and just remember, it's always your rise over your run.